Hello ratbags, it's Jade, welcome. As ever, I always usually do survival, open world games, guides, tutorials and news, but never really have I delved into this hate bait business. You know, the big huge letters on the thumbnail saying Sony have messed up, the fans aren't happy. I don't really like that kind of content normally, but there are some games that I am kind of feeling passionate about or some thoughts about, and Cyberpunk 2077 is one of them because I've bought the game and I'm not happy with it. Guess what? Nor is Sony. They've just put a statement out a few hours ago stating that anyone that bought the game on PlayStation can get a refund. This is huge. This is unprecedented. I can't think of another game that has gone to these levels. I told you guys only a couple days ago that CD Projekt Red had lied to players, said that you could get refunds, and then it turns out a day later in their investment call they stated they had no actual program running with PlayStation. If you guys know you bought lots of games from PlayStation, you'll know how hard it is to get a refund. PlayStation were basically saying in lots of replies that you would not be able to get a refund because the game isn't actually broken. That would be the only reason you could get a refund. They stated that updates would be coming, and that was it. Millions of players, I'm sure, have seen that kind of info floating around by now. But in this statement here, it says SIE strives to ensure a high level of customer satisfaction. Therefore, we will begin to offer a full refund for all gamers who have purchased Cyberpunk 2077 via PlayStation Store. SIE will also be removing Cyberpunk 2077 from PlayStation Store until further notice. Once we have confirmed that you purchased Cyberpunk 2077 via PlayStation Store, we will begin processing your refund. Please note that completion of the refund may vary based on your payment method and financial institution. This is absolutely batshit mental. Never have I seen this reaction. Never have I seen PlayStation actually come out and go, you know what? This is so bad, we're going to refund it. You think of all the shit show launches in the last few years. Maybe in the most recent, Fallout 76. Then you go to something like No Man's Sky. Two games that caused a lot of outrage. Even go way back to like Colonial Marines. I don't think digital was really as big as then, obviously. But this is mental. You know your game is bad or something's gone wrong with it when it's being treated more harshly than Anthem. Now, it's not all roses, there are some issues. It looks like the amount of people that are trying to use that link and get the refund are having issues. I'm guessing that's down to the sheer amount of numbers. Now let's actually talk about them numbers and let's talk about some of that. CD Projekt Red said they had like 8 million pre-orders. 40% of that was on console. So when you boil it down, that's nearly like 3.6 million, something like that. It was like rough numbers. Bear with my quick maths here. Now bear in mind, them pre-orders would have come from stores as well. But when you look at the way that things have been going, most people have been buying their games digitally this year, and that has always been the upward trend anyway. Estimates I've seen from other sites and reporting on previous games and sales show that a lot of games now are being sold digitally, and it's roughly around 80% at the moment, between 75 and 80. So even if you added an 80% marker to that 3.6 million point, you're looking still at about 3 million. Then you actually factor in that PlayStation has a 2-to-1 lead, maybe even a 3-to-1 lead on the Xbox nearly. And you're probably in the region of like 1.9, possibly 2 million sales. But we'll go with a conservative one of like 1.9, 1.8 maybe. So that's a lot of players that have bought the game on PlayStation that are now eligible to get a refund. And that's not even including people that actually bought the game after launch, which apparently makes up nearly 50% of sales on the day. So chances are Cyberpunk has probably sold close to around 15 million copies by the time the game had launched. So you could argue there might be around 4 million customers on PlayStations that are now eligible for a refund or more, especially since CD Projekt Red hid and deceived people, not showing PlayStation 4 gameplay and not allowing anyone any kind of review footage or review code for consoles at all. One of the most interesting things with this is that actually the comments that you guys have been telling me, every time I look on one of my videos about it, you tell me the Xbox versions are okay, or your version is anyway. I've yet to see anyone really say their PlayStation version's fine. Maybe it really has been just worse. Maybe the PlayStation obviously support teams have just received so much more. Obviously on Xbox it's easier to get a refund. You can simply sign in, look at your library, and as long as you haven't played it over 2 weeks, you can normally get a refund with a few stipulations. PlayStation has been notoriously bad issuing refunds. There's nothing from the actual Cyberpunk main Twitter feed. I'm guessing there's not going to be much from CD Projekt Red either. But this is huge news. The fact they're also removing it, this isn't just a case of maybe helping out a few disgruntled customers, removing it from store is a massive deal. That just doesn't happen that often. People are comparing it to Fallout 76 and No Man's Sky. Well, let's look at this in a little bit of isolation and not hyperbole. Fallout 76 did launch, it was buggy, it was broken. But it was kind of expected. We knew these types of games, online games, multiplayer games would have some of these issues. And although their chief marketing dude pretty much spouted a bunch of bullshit, not to mention Todd about the 4 times the detail and the 16 times this and that, when the game actually launched, you could complete it. You could go through areas. It wasn't completely busted and broken. Not to the level that I've seen Cyberpunk anyway. I'm talking about hard crashes. I'm talking about affecting the rest of the platform. I also think something else that's probably gone against CD Projekt Red here is the controversy over the epilepsy. You may have seen that Liana Rupert, one of the reporters from Game Informer, quite rightly highlighted that Cyberpunk had real triggering episodes of epilepsy going on. That's what it could happen with some of the strobing effects and particular game segments that really were the pattern that they used to test this kind of stuff on people that have epilepsy. Now she continued to play it to investigate it further, and she ended up doing a big piece, and CD Projekt Red pretty much thanked her for it and decided to add more warnings and also change how that set pieces worked. Now the problem is, I don't know if this actually hit the console versions. This went out nearly a week ago, so I'm sure it has probably hit. But that kind of thing where it could be potentially opening up Sony to court cases is really where we're at, and why maybe actually Sony decided to take the game off the shelves even more. There are always usually warnings at the start of console games, but yeah, sometimes it gets missed. If you're wondering why it took them so long, well, they probably have their own tests to conduct as well. And if you're wondering why it managed to pass certification pretty much just means it's not going to break the system, you're not going to be able to access or hack or do anything stupid or malicious via that game onto the other games or other systems or accounts. It's not going to brick your console and make it unplayable. That's the kind of thing that they test. They don't test little bugs, hence why all these games make it through with so many problems. It's actually up to the game makers to make sure that these things are tested properly and adequately. There are also instances where they can bypass some of this testing. They get usually waivers written that show a list of problems and issues, and as long as the developer says, yeah, we've fixed it, sometimes the game will still go on sale with just the promises from developers that day one patches will fix it. But of course, if something happens, they don't manage to make it in, that game will be sold with that problem that Sony said you shouldn't have. So this is why I'm thinking this has happened. I don't necessarily think it's down to the backlash, but then again it could be. It seemed pretty shady from CD Projekt Red to drag Sony and Microsoft into this and kind of shift blame on them for not doing refunds. Their first statement stated that you would be able to get refunds from Xbox and PlayStation 4, but it seems that wasn't the case. PlayStation 4 were not giving refunds out earlier. They admitted they had never spoken with Microsoft or Sony about this statement. And I guess it really could be a case of them maybe doing this. Maybe they're the ones that said to PlayStation, you know what, we've mucked up. Can you please issue refunds? Take this game off lists and we'll do it. That would be a good thing. Like if CD Projekt Red come out now, I would hold up more respect for them. I would. If they turn around and say, you know what, it was us that asked Sony to remove the game. But if this turns out to be something that Sony have just implemented and has nothing to do with CD Projekt Red, then it just shows how far these guys have fallen. By judging by the statement that was released, it doesn't mention anything to do with CD Projekt Red. It just simply states they'll offer refunds to all gamers who purchase it. So huge news. Oh yeah, and didn't really finish off my thread about the games that were bad before. You could argue though that Fallout 76, as I said, it was still playable. Yes, it was buggy. Yes, it didn't look great in certain spaces, but it didn't have the multitude of problems that Cyberpunk has had. And it certainly didn't have the amount of people that bought it. It was already suspicious from Fallout fans. They didn't go out in their droves to buy this. This isn't a Fallout 4 phenomenon where it sold 20 million copies. People were pretty nervous about Fallout 76, so they definitely held off until they started seeing reviews. And of course, then reviews came in, and yeah, it confirmed a lot of people's worst fears. Whereas Cyberpunk really didn't have that opportunity because they withheld review footage. They didn't allow people to review it properly. They lied about it, and so it meant there was much more angry backlash from players that were expecting something that they didn't get, especially after years of promises that the console versions would be fine. People trying to mention No Man's Sky. No Man's Sky had bugs, it had a lack of content, but it wasn't as broken or as buggy as this. People were upset because the developers overhyped it and pretty much lied about what the game would contain. And you could argue that's probably just as bad as maybe not realising that older consoles would be able to play it. But this term older console or old gen, get out here. There's only a few million of the brand new consoles out in circulation. There's like 130, 140 million PlayStations out there compared to only maybe like 2.5, 3 million PlayStation 5s or whatever it would be. We're not at that stage yet where we're just talking about old gen as grandpa's little console. So yeah, big news. Don't know what this is going to do to their share index or the prices. I imagine not great things. What likelihood is going to happen now is it will come back, but it won't be back until they get the updates for it in January or February. There's no news about what Xbox are going to do or if they're taking any steps themselves to offer blanket refunds. I imagine since they have been issuing them already, I don't think they're going to come out and say this either. And as I said, from you guys, the comments I've seen and a lot I've seen online, I've definitely seen more problems with the PlayStation versions than the Xbox versions. So let me know what you think about that. What's going to happen with CD Projekt Red now? How can they get back from this? As I said, if it turns out they were the instigators of this, they really did ring up Sony and said, look, refund it all, I will give them more respect and I will be able to listen to them and go forward with whatever they're going to do to fix things, and trusting them that they will get to the point where they can make this game run better. And that is it, I'm done. That is my last kind of live news video of the year. I've got some content to do with Art Survival Evolved. I've got some below zero Let's Play action over Christmas, but I'll be done pretty much until after Christmas at least. Have a great holiday, people, no matter what you do. And if anyone buys you Cyberpunk 2077, just pick that up and dash it in their face, yeah?